Hello and welcome to this training on determination of special education eligibility. My name is Adam Christ, one of the school psychologists with Bismarck Public Schools. The purpose of today's training is to provide you with updated information regarding the eligibility process currently practiced by Bismarck Public Schools. We will begin first with a student profile meeting for initial evaluations and re-evaluations. Required members for initial evaluations include the parents, the general education teacher, and any appropriate specialists who may be needed for suspected areas of need. For re-evaluations, the IEP team will be conducting the process. Remember that required members for an IEP include the parents, the general education teacher, administrator and/or designee, and any appropriate specialists who may be needed for suspected areas of need. A meeting between just the specialist and the parent does not fulfill the intent of the law. High school students are usually invited to special education meetings regarding themselves. At age 18, they are of the age of majority and will be the legal contact. Legal rights transfer from the parents to the student at this age. Even though they are 18, at BPS, we encourage students to invite their parents. Remember, you will no longer be able to share information with the student's parents without the student's permission. There is implied consent when the student brings the parents to the meeting with him or her. However, if wanting to speak with the parents without the student present, an ROI or release of information is required to be signed by the student. Parents need to be notified via a prior written notice for all special education meetings, including the profile meeting. This should be sent to the parent in a timely manner so they are fully aware of the intended meeting. If parents do not show for the first meeting, the meeting must be stopped. A second opportunity to meet will be scheduled, accompanied by a prior written notice sent to the parents. On initial evaluations, the team may not proceed without the parent, and the referral process is stopped. On a re-evaluation, only 2 opportunities are required to be given to the parents. Even if they do not attend either meeting, the IEP team can proceed with the re-eval process after prior notices for 2 separate meetings are given. Consent must be received, however, before any assessments can be completed. Remember, the reason why the parents are invited is for them to be a part of the decision-making team who will intervene on their child's behalf. It is critical to obtain input from parents so the team will fully understand the scope of the student's needs. The parents are able to contribute valuable information about their child, including developmental milestones, healthcare issues, behavior in the home and other settings, homework completion, recreational interests, and vocational interests. They have the legal power to make decisions, and for them to do this, they need to understand and know their rights and what their child's challenges are. Offer a copy of parental rights and give explanation of all critical elements, highlighting those relevant to the point of the meeting, and offering full description of all rights as appropriate. Parents must also sign the consent for evaluation form prior to starting the student profile meeting for initial evaluations. For re-evaluations, parents do not sign a consent for evaluation unless the team has assessment questions. More information will be provided on this on an upcoming slide. Begin each meeting with parents, with introductions and a conversation about why the team is meeting. The intent of the profile meeting is to gather information which will tell the story of the student's strengths and challenges. It gives a comprehensive picture of information already gathered, inclusive of developmental history and notable services. The profile will indicate patterns of current and past functioning. It will indicate areas in need of further information. It allows all stakeholders a voice in describing the student and to share insights into what needs are being seen, what skills, talents can be encouraged, what interventions have and have not been successful. We want to understand the student holistically and determine what further information is needed. All relevant information should be reviewed and the source cited. This process will enable the team to start determining which areas of eligibility might be considered. This will drive essential questions and possible assessments which will fulfill the required sense of eligibility criteria. Additional information needed, which is identified by the team, is used to determine whether a disability exists, or in the case of a reevaluation, if a disability continues to exist. The current levels of academic achievement related to the developmental needs of a child, whether the child may need special education and related services, or in the case of a reevaluation of a child, whether the child continues to need special education and related services, and whether any additions or modifications to the special education and related services area are needed to enable the child to 1. Meet the measurable annual goals in the child's IEP, and 2. To be involved in and progress in the general education curriculum, or for a preschool child, to participate in age-appropriate activities. The 7 characteristics listed on this slide are the areas discussed during the profile meeting. They are cognitive functioning, academic performance, communicative status, physical characteristics, social emotional development, adaptive characteristics, and ecological factors. Things considered in each area include, but are not limited to, the following. For cognitive functioning, vocabulary knowledge, working memory, long-term retention of information, verbal and nonverbal reasoning skills, and spatial organization and planning. For academic performance, pre-reading and pre-math skills, grade level achievement of standards, other curriculum areas of performance, and past interventions and the effectiveness of them. For communicative status, receptive and expressive language. This includes but is not limited to social communication, vocabulary, speech sound production, voice, ability to follow conversation and participate in the conversation appropriately, and consideration of bilingual or non-English languages. For physical characteristics, this could include gross motor skills, fine motor skills, and the mobility for learning, living, and work, past hospitalizations and outpatient services, hearing and vision, and use of medications. For social emotional development, personal and emotional functioning, the ability to relate to others, to express emotions or show a range of emotions, general affect, self-esteem, a student's leisure skills, and diagnosis and agency services. For adaptive characteristics, this can include social behaviors, self-help skills, attendance, behavioral referrals, organization skills, and work and study skills. For ecological factors, this can include family, home, and culture, a number of moves a family may have, acute family situations, everyday living skills, and involvement in community activities. Consideration for non-biased assessment should happen throughout the evaluation planning process. Assessments or other evaluation materials used to assess a child under this part are selected and administered so as not to be discriminatory on a racial or cultural basis, are provided and administered in the child's native language or other mode of communication, and in the form most likely to yield accurate information on what the child knows and can do academically, developmentally, and functionally, unless it is clearly not feasible to do so or administer, are used for the purposes for which the assessments or measures are valid and reliable. are administered by trained and knowledgeable personnel and are administered in accordance with any instructions provided by the producer of the assessments. This consideration allows the team to address factors which may interfere with obtaining a true picture of the student's functioning. Further, non-discriminatory assessment procedures that were addressed throughout the evaluation process must be included in the Integrated Written Assessment Report, or IWAR, so this information can be considered when determining whether a child has a disability and whether the child needs special education and related services. If the evaluation team has questions, the questions should be aligned with the specific characteristic area. These will automatically migrate into the assessment plan. The purpose of the assessment is to determine if a disability exists, initial meetings, to verify or change a disability, 3-year reevaluations, and determine individual program needs. If the parents and team determine that there are questions, the parent signs the consent for evaluation form if it is a reevaluation. Remember, the parents have already signed a consent for evaluation if it is an initial evaluation. The federal law allows 60 calendar days to complete the assessment and meet for the IWAR with the team, inclusive of parents. BPS practice has been 30 calendar days. Again, a prior written notice will be sent to the parents. With the assessments completed, the findings are entered, integrated, and summarized into the IWAR. You may proceed to the IEP if appropriate. If there are no questions, this means that the team has determined that they have gathered sufficient information, which may include response to intervention, or RTI, intervention data, curriculum-based measure, or CBM results, third-party assessment reports, and parent and teacher information. The PCM, or primary case manager, informs parents of their right to request assessments, even if the team does not believe these are necessary. Again, we want the parents to be informed of their power to make decisions in the best interest of their child. For students with a specific learning disability, or SLD, the SLD teacher must have observed the child's academic performance and behavior related to the areas of difficulty in the routine classroom setting and report findings in the student profile. If there are no questions, proceed to the IWAR, completing all 3 sections. These are the 3 areas which will be completed in the IWAR, regardless if questions were assessed or not. Parents need to be notified via a prior written notice for all special education meetings, including the IWAR meeting. This should be sent to the parent in a timely manner, so they are fully aware of the intended meeting. If parents do not show for the first meeting, the meeting must be stopped. A second opportunity to meet will be scheduled, accompanied by another prior written notice sent to the parents. On a reevaluation, only 2 opportunities are required to be given to the parents. Even if they do not attend either meeting, the IEP team can proceed with the eligibility determination process after 2 prior written notices for 2 separate meetings are given. Remember, the reason why the parents are invited is for them to be a part of the decision-making team who will intervene on their child's behalf. Offer a copy of parental rights and give explanation of all critical elements, highlighting those relevant to the point of the meeting and offering full description of all rights as appropriate. For the findings section of the IWAR, if the team had assessment questions, summarize the assessment results by answering the assessment questions. Include a statement that the tests were reliable and valid, or note any variances on the validity and reliability of information reported. Report how considerations of non-discriminatory procedures were addressed throughout the evaluation process, if you checked one of the areas. If no questions were asked, then a statement should be written that there were no questions that required additional assessment in order to determine or confirm the student's disability and educational needs. For the integration section of the IWAR, integrate or summarize, inclusive of new findings if answering a question, all current and past information from all sources by characteristic areas. Pull forward a summary of the student profile information, including findings from all sources, integrating that information with new information from your assessment results, organized into the 7 characteristic areas, which again are cognitive functioning, academic performance, communicative status, physical characteristics, emotional social development, adaptive characteristics, and ecological factors. Cite sources, including all team member input. Parents too. Integrate previous assessment results with current information. Report how non-biased assessment factors impact the student's achievement level. Provide documentation regarding the child not making sufficient progress toward the meeting of state-approved grade level standards. Discuss ways performance in one area may affect performance in another area. Document how the student was provided appropriate instruction in general education settings by qualified personnel, either prior to or as a part of the referral process. The observational findings need to reflect the relationship of the observational information to the student's current levels of functioning. If a student is less than school age, a team member should observe the student in an environment appropriate and familiar to the student. A summary report based on team analysis ensures that observations are not only recorded and shared, but that attention is given to observations of the student's ability to process information, express an idea, or perform a skill. Since observation data may either support or conflict with conclusions based on other assessment procedures, the inclusion of such data is critical. There is some additional required documentation for specific learning disability eligibility determination. This includes document relevant behaviors, academic or non-academic, noted during the observation of the child, and discuss the relationship of that behavior to the child's academic functioning in the general education setting. If a student is being considered for eligibility through the RTI process, write a statement documenting whether the child is not making sufficient progress, their rate of learning, toward meeting age or state-approved grade level standards. If using the traditional discrepancy model, write a statement documenting whether there is a discrepancy between ability and achievement that is not correctable without special education and related services. Document educationally relevant medical findings. Again, if the RTI process is used, document the instructional strategies used and the student-centered data collected, and document the date when the child's parents were notified about the state's policies regarding the amount and nature of the student performance data that would be collected and the general education services that would be provided, and strategies for increasing the child's rate of learning and the parent's right to request an evaluation. Document whether the student can or cannot achieve adequately for his or her age, or meet North Dakota grade level standards in at least one of the 8 characteristic areas. Document the team's decision and determination concerning the effects of a visual, hearing, or motor disability, intellectual disability, emotional disturbance, cultural factors, environment or an economic disadvantage, or limited English proficiency on the child's achievement level. For the summary and recommendations section of the IWAR, recommendations regarding instructional needs and participation in the general education curriculum should be documented. Tie all formal and informal results together, looking for themes, patterns, and discrepancies, strengths and weaknesses relative to age and/or ability, North Dakota grade level standards or intellectual development, and if it is correctable or not without special education and related services. Document information regarding instructional needs that impact the child's involvement in and progress in the general curriculum. Document the team's determination of whether or not the child has a disability according to North Dakota guidelines, or document if the child is not found eligible under criteria of a category of special education. Document the child's primary and, if applicable, secondary disability. Include recommendations for future IEP or intervention team regarding appropriate goals or accommodations, or referral to a 504 team if appropriate. Insert the appropriate eligibility worksheet and check endorsed criteria, or include insert statement for cases where no eligibility was found. An example insert statement for when a disability is not found could be, the team has determined that the student does not meet the criteria for any special education disability category. A new addition to our IWARs will include a statement regarding categories considered. At the bottom of the slide, the following insert statement should be used for all evaluations. Indicate which of the following categories of disability were considered by the evaluation team, and mark the areas that were considered. The need for specialized instruction should play a primary role in the referral process, in the decision of eligibility, and in determining the services provided to the child. So what makes instruction truly individualized and specially designed for a student with a disability? It is different from what a general education student receives. It is in how the instruction is linked to the student's IEP goals and objectives. It is planned, organized, and meaningful in that it is an intentional and systematic process that specifically addresses the student's needs as expressed in the IEP goals and objectives. IDEA requires a multidisciplinary team using a variety of assessments to determine the extent that the disability adversely impacts the child's education, expectation versus performance. This needs to be described in the IWAR summary and recommendations section. When a student is determined eligible for special education services, the multidisciplinary team uses the assessment data to guide development of annual goals, to identify accommodations, modifications, and supplementary aids and services, and related services to address all of the educationally related needs of the student. The student's IEP provides a roadmap for providing FAPE, or free appropriate public education, to the student in the LRE, the least restrictive environment. Each area of eligibility has its own unique set of inclusionary factors. Please see the guidelines and worksheet for each of the inclusionary factors criteria for a specific eligibility area. One of the responsibilities of the child's evaluation team is to consider all factors that may influence or affect the child's performance. In addition to inclusionary factors criteria, the team must also consider the following factors in cases of all disability categories: lack of appropriate instruction in reading, including the essential components of reading instruction, phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension; lack of appropriate instruction in math, and limited English proficiency. Additionally, there are other exclusionary factors to specific disability areas, for example, specific learning disabilities, emotional disturbance, and autism. If the team determines that an exclusionary factor is the primary interference in the child's performance, then that disability cannot be identified. Although the following exclusionary factors are specific to the specific learning disability criteria, they are important factors to consider for any disability area. The disability is not the result of vision, hearing, or motor disability, intellectual disability, emotional disturbance, cultural factors, environmental or economic disadvantages, or limited English proficiency. This is an example of what each guideline will look like for the special education eligibility areas. Each category will feature the same outline, with the federal definition listed at the top of the guideline sheet. This will be followed by eligibility and criteria. Some categories may also feature sections titled exclusionary factors or inclusionary factors. Finally, each guideline will end with an educational impact section. The guidelines will be utilized as a reference sheet as special education evaluations are conducted. Please contact your special education coordinator if you are in need of the guidelines for each area, as all guidelines were formatted and structured the summer of 2015. The following is an example of the worksheet format that will be utilized for each special education disability. The format follows the same structure as the guidelines. The worksheets will be inserted into the IWAR in the summary and recommendation section, if a student is found eligible. Each component has an empty space to the left side that will need to be checked to ensure eligibility. An additional component to the worksheet that is not on the guideline is the data section. Here, teams will mark what tools or assessments were utilized as part of the evaluation. Each disability category has specific tools or assessments listed. Additionally, some disability categories have specific components that will need to be addressed through the use of appropriate tools or resources. Thus, only staff trained in each disability category may use the worksheet in the IWAR. Once you are trained in a category, you are able to insert the worksheet into the IWAR. Thank you for listening to the contents of this presentation. Your time is appreciated, and we hope this training provided you with the information needed to feel more comfortable in understanding special education evaluations at BPS. If you have questions, please contact your special education coordinator.